Good evening, everyone. We probably should get started. So we're going to get started with this conversation that I think this was kind of in conjunction with a visit by Mosab Toha and Mohsen, who were here in town for a conference, and we were talking right as soon as they arrived, and we said, why don't we plan to have an event? And they said, fine. So 2 days ago, you may have got the notice that this event was taking place. So it's great to have them be so gracious to be here and to be in conversation. And of course, Nakba Remembrance is coming up in a couple of days, and we thought it'd be a perfect way for 2 Palestinian scholars to be able to come and share their thoughts and their ideas. But before we start, we have somebody very, very special, a very important person who really is one of these people that has defined what courage looks like. I think a lot of us feel that we do a lot, and sometimes there's a sense of, risk and that we take in some of the things that we do. But someone at the past few days has been at the forefront of taking that kind of risk. And he's now coming in. He's known as Guido. The man on the Frederick Douglass Bridge. So it's he was just released from jail. If you want to come up, please, to the front. Come on up, Guido. I don't know, come on up. So, thank you. Yes, so the Iranians need to give him a hug. So all the Iranians get up and come on and give him a hug, personally. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, he's definitely a very special person. I think many of us have been watching him stay on that bridge for so many days. And earlier, I was watching a video. Ra'ad was showing me about he crawled up the side of the bridge, inch by inch by inch, like an inchworm. Huh? Barefooted, inch by inch, all the way to the top, and to stay up there. How many days were you up there?
It's either 5 or 6 days.
He forgot 5 or 6 days. He lost track, which is really quite remarkable to be able to be up there for that long and be able to stand up for something that he believed in. And I think brought a highlight. He was in every news organization, which is what this is about. It's really raising the heat and raising the issues to people that oftentimes fall asleep, and some of us even sort of forget and put it in the back. We talk about ceasefires, we talk about this, and one thing after another after another. These types of actions really bring us to reality and show us what real courage looks like, and gives others the opportunity to be able to stand up for what they believe in as well. Would you like to say a few words?
End the war! All right, end the war! Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And this is not your first. Exactly. And this is not your first time up there. Can you tell people the last time you were here, you were up on that bridge, and what kind of attention you got, and what happened this time? Can you give us just a brief synopsis of why you did that and why you did it now, and a little bit of what happened?
Yeah, I guess in both times it was, the spirit moved me to go up there. And the first time it was holding the future of my daughter in consideration. It was the day that the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. And as a father, I couldn't stand back and let that happen. And I went up there and I called people from there over about 24 hours to get off the couch and to get into the streets and to defend the rights of our loved ones. And that's what we have to do, because if we don't defend those rights, they're going to be destroyed. And that's the same thing that we're looking at today. And yeah, this time when I woke up on February 28th and I saw the bombing, I knew that I was going to do something, but I didn't know that it was going to be this until like the day before. So I came here and I just did what I had to do. And that's what we all have to do what we have to do, you know? It's not like necessarily convenient, and it's not necessarily costless or comfortable to do it, but people are being killed in our name right now. And if we don't resist it, what does that say about who we are? And we have the power to stop it. We just have to find the courage. There are so many millions of people who reject this war. And with a small amount of action, we can end it. Not waiting for someone else to end it, but end it ourselves.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. We love Guido, and we love. I told him the Italians are great. You know, we have Guido, we have Francesca Albanese, both of them amazing, two Italian folks that are really standing up for Palestinian rights and for ending wars and ending all the carnage happening all over the world. So it's great. So I want to give it, before we start the program, let's give people a chance to make some announcements. I think Katia Stitt from WPFW is here to make an announcement. Give it up for WPFW, your station for jazz and justice.
Well, first of all, I just can't believe Guido is here. My heart is full. For someone to take that on, you know, it's a big deal. And a lot of people in this room have done those kind of things. And that's the kind of thing that WPFW highlights and talks about and will not shut up about. And so on Friday, some of you may know this, but for several years now, I think almost a decade, we have joined with other stations across the country and around the world to commemorate the Nakba. And it's something called Radio Free Palestine. And so this year, Eastern time will start at 8 a.m. and 5 a.m. and will run until 7 p.m. So Friday, the Nakba, May 15th. I'm sorry, I should have said May 15th. We'll start at 5 a.m. and we'll run until 7 p.m. So we hope that you'll tune in. We hope that you'll tell a friend. We will do this until Palestine is free. So thank you. And thank you, Busboys.
Thank you, Katia. Can we get an update on the flotilla and the folks that are still in custody with the Israelis? Can somebody come and tell us what's the update on that? Does anyone know what's the update on the folks that were abducted by the Israeli IOF? Yes, come on up. This is Miko Peled, who is, of course, founder of Palestine House of Freedom and a friend and an activist and just a nice guy.
All I know is from the Hebrew press, and they've so they're arrested. They're in prison, the two of them, and they just extended their arrest, so they're not being released yet. And the lawyers are trying to demonstrate, obviously, that they were kidnapped in international waters, and that happens to be illegal. But I don't think the judicial system, the Israeli judicial system, cares one way or the other. So they're still there. They're still in jail. Of course, we should not forget the purpose of their mission. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Should I make an up? Okay, since I'm here, I have two announcements from Palestine House of Freedom. Who said that? Okay. So Friday the 15th, I just got a confirmation. We're having an event with Francesca Albanese at 11. It's going to be, because she's out, of course she can't come here because she's been sanctioned by this by the Trump regime. So it's going to be by Zoom, but it's going to be in person. So come by 11 o'clock, Friday the 15th. And then Sunday the 17th, we're holding a Nakba commemoration event at Palestine House of Freedom from 3 to 6. So that's the following Sunday. So like I said, again, the 15th at 11 a.m., Francesca Albanese. On the 17th, we're doing a Nakba commemoration ceremony at Palestine House of Freedom from 3 to 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Miko. Medea, do you want to update us on the? I know you were at the AI conference that was happening at the convention center. I love your new wig, by the way. I've seen it before, but I'm still surprised how we can still get into these places without being noticed. You know, but you want to come up and give us an update on that? Give it up to Medea Benjamin, please.
So at the convention center, there is a convention about AI, and it's booth after booth after booth, and almost every single one is related to war, related to military. And it's so disgusting the way AI is being used, of course, now to create thousands of targets for Israel and the US to use in these wars. So we were there protesting AI, and there will be more protests happening tomorrow and the next day. There are Israeli companies there and plenty of Pentagon related companies. But the other thing I wanted to say is, I don't know if you mentioned it about the strikes that are happening now. You did mention it.
No, go ahead, please.
No. So raise your hand if you've heard that the U.S. has just started strikes again in Iran. So, and then on the same time, they're saying, well, we haven't started the war again. So I don't know what the heck they're talking about, because they're bombing again. And that's why I think what Guido did was so absolutely critical. And we have to do more. We just have to do more. They won't stop, especially when they're in the middle of negotiations. You know, and when they say there's almost an agreement, that's when they start bombing again. So I'm sure there will be more protests being called. And those of us who want to join us in Congress, we're making incremental steps. More and more people are voting for these War Powers Acts, and there will be more War Powers Acts that say Trump does not have the right to go into Iran militarily. So if you want to join us in our congressional efforts, please see me afterwards. But we've got to step it up. And I think if there's one thing, you know, Guido is facing a lot of charges, and he's probably facing some real jail time. And anything we do in solidarity with him as well in your legal struggle coming up, raising money for legal fees, helping you any way you can, we want to be supportive of you. So let's just do more and give it up once again for Guido.
Thank you, Medea. And if you can't show up in person, make the phone calls, write the letters. They do add up and they do make a difference. So please don't stop doing that. And, you know, the lying is what I find to be really interesting. I mean, it used to be they kind of don't say anything and they do whatever they have, but they actually outright lie. They said that they're not going to be attacking anymore, and the next day they attack. So the credibility of this country, whatever there was left of it, is out the window. And it's really kind of a shame because it's in our name. You know, it's being done in our name. So continue putting the heat under their feet, making sure that they don't succeed. And success oftentimes means that people just tune out. You know, success doesn't always mean that they're going to change, but success means that we tune out, and we can't do that. So we have to keep our voices, keep our effort, keep our struggle, keep the courage, and keep it going. Thank you. So now we're going to bring up to the stage two of my favorite people, Mohsen Mahdawi and Mosab Toha. Come on up, guys. They're going to be. So, Mosab Toha has been here a couple of times. He was here with his debut book, Things That I Hear Between My Ears. Is that how it goes? Things you may find in my ears, between or in my ears. Something like that. But I should have looked it up before I talked. But I feel like I know him. I know the book, and it won the American Book Award and the Palestine Book Award, which is the American Book Award is the most prestigious award you can win for a book. So congratulate him. And then he came back to do his second book, which was Forest of Noise, and that was also has been highly recommended and highly critically acclaimed. So thank you so much for all that you do. He also opened Gaza's first English library. So he's a librarian, he's an author, he's a poet, he's an activist, all these things. So thank you for what you do. And Mohsen Mahdawi is many of you saw him. I think his arrest went viral. He went to apply for his citizenship, and they actually abducted him. And he was jailed for a couple of weeks and then released. And he is also, of course, an activist. He is a student still at Columbia University, International Affairs, International Studies, working on conflict resolution in international arenas. And I think recently they restated the possibility of deportation, right? So that's been restated just recently in the last couple of days, right? So it's really pathetic and sad how this administration is going after people that are actually making America better. They actually are holding this country to its values. You know, us immigrants, people that come to this country because they think it's a better place to be than where they came from, suddenly find themselves in a situation that is so horrible and so untenable. And really, it sort of makes you pause and think, like, what is this American value that we talk about? So we, as immigrants, I believe, are the insurance policy for democracy in America. We are the ones, because we're the ones that feel it first. We are the canaries in the coal mine. And so when they come after us, everybody else should be on notice, because if you don't stand up, you will be next. And so I want to make sure that people understand the importance of speaking up, not just when people come to you, but when others come to people you know. And continue, please, to not be silenced. So thank you. I don't know how you want to start. We didn't really talk about this much, but tell us what you're up to these days. I want to get an update about your family. I know that you have families in Gaza and in other places in Palestine, all over the world, of course. But I want to hear a little bit about what's happening right now on the ground. I know the assault continues despite there's a ceasefire that we continue hearing. So they've got a new trick. They just call it a ceasefire and continue bombing. So the media continues to regurgitate this bullshit, and we continue to look the other way, some of us at least. But please tell us about what's the updates. There's a microphone right there. If it's not on, you have to turn it on. You have to turn it on. There's a switch, I think. Is it on?
Okay, that's right.
Okay, thank you so much. Shukran كتير. Thank you so much, Andy. This is a very special event because this is my first event with Mohsen. And thank you. We're happy that he is not detained, and we pray that he will never be detained again, because no one should be detained or even harassed for expressing their fundamental right of expressing not only their opinion, but their duty of speaking out against an ongoing live stream genocide. And I'm so very glad to see so many familiar faces. There are so many special people here. Thank you so much for showing up. And thanks again to Busboys and Poets. I think this is my third time here, but I did maybe one other event at a different bookstore. So it's very great to be visiting Busboys and Poets in its many different branches. I mean, Mohsen and I agreed to talk about ourselves, about our lives, about our backgrounds, but I will start very quickly with some updates from Gaza. Yesterday, at least 9 people were killed in airstrikes. Before I came here, Israel shot a child in Beit Lahia. We don't know the condition of that child, but he was shot in Beit Lahia, the city where I grew up since 2000 until I had to leave. I have 3 sisters who are living in Gaza with their husbands and their children. 2 of my sisters live in tents in the street, have been living in tents in the streets for over 2 years. I'm not sure if this is something that any human being could imagine, not to say accept. I was on the phone today with my sister Aya, who has 4 children. The youngest is 1 year and a half. The oldest is 15 years old. So I asked her about whether her children go to school. And she told me her children started going to some kind of a school, which is something like an educational point, 3 months ago. So 3 months ago, since October 2023, which means they haven't gone to school for over 2 years. Okay, sister, what kind of school are they going to? Well, it is a tent in the street. And by the way, one of these tents that my nephews and nieces go to are exposed to Israeli bullets and Israeli airstrikes. One example, the educational point that is very close to where my sister lives right now in Beit Lahia, that's the same educational tent where the 9-year-old child, Ritaj Rihan, was killed inside. Remember the 9-year-old child who was killed in a bullet. And coincidentally, my nephew, who's 12 years old, was sitting next to the girl. And when he came back to his mother, he told her, Mama, fi binit, there was a girl, Jambi, next to me, who was shot in the jaw. But she was still breathing. That's what he told her mother. That's before the girl succumbed to her wounds. So I asked her, okay, they go to school since they have been going to school for 3 months. What kind of school? It is a tent. Okay, how often do they go? 3 days a week. How long is the day? 3 hours. So 3 hours, 3 days a week for the past 3 months. Are they offering them any compensation educational materials for what they have not learned over them? Because, I mean, if a child is now supposed to be in third grade, it means that they have missed first and second. I mean, can you imagine if you're a parent or you are an educator, or you have nephews and nieces or cousins who are very young, what it means to miss 1 month of school, 2 months of school? I know that we as educators struggled a lot when our kids were attending classes online during COVID. Imagine 2 years at least of no schools. And again, these tents are in the street exposed to the Israeli terrorist attacks. And still, what I think these kids need are not only education, but trauma sessions. That's not something that anyone in this country that is funding and supporting the genocide is mentioning, whether in mainstream media, in Congress, and I don't know. So this is the situation right now in Gaza. I will give it to Mohsen right now to speak about himself, about where he comes from. Yeah, go ahead, Mohsen.
I yield to the speaker. Good evening, everyone. It's not only that it's a great energy that I feel in this room, but it's a great view to see you from the stage. I hope each of you experienced that by talking about your experience at some point. And before I start, I want to extend my gratitude to Andy and Marjan and Busboys and Poets. Yes. Not only for hosting us here and at their home, but also for sustaining such a beautiful community and creating an ecosystem of hope that we need. So thank you. I also want to extend my gratitude to Cuedo, not only for his courage, but also for the hope, because I see you in me and I see myself in you, and people like you give me hope and courage and reassure me that the pain of injustice and oppression is not left unforgotten. So thank you for that. So this is my first event, in fact, at Busboys and Poets. And it feels great, in fact, to be here in the belly of the beast. And often I say the belly of the beast about New York. That's the capitalist belly of the beast. And this is the political belly of the beast. And I believe from those belly of the beast where the change would come, and the change that I know and I believe in, that the love that we hold in our hearts and the courage to bring justice is going to start from those cities and bring this empire down to justice. I can talk about a lot about what's happening in the West Bank, but I see that I see many faces and see many kofiyas, so I would assume that you're already informed. Some of those conversations will come later through our conversation. So I would hold on that. But I want to take a moment to acknowledge two deaths that are very significant. And if we can just take a deep breath and send some love and courage to Diego Avila, whose father has passed away, whose mother has passed away while he's in the Israeli prison. This is the guy from the flotilla, and he most likely would not have the opportunity for to say goodbye. And the other is to a father who's no longer alive, Naif Samara from Nablus, who was shot in the head by the Israeli terrorist forces just 3 days ago on the day of the birth of his first child. So we send them love and strength. And I reassure myself and you that this shall pass too, and their memories will only be more energy and fire that will bring more light into a world of darkness that we are witnessing nowadays. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about myself. In fact, I get a bit sick of people introducing me all the time as the person who get detained by ICE and so on. No offense, Andy, but I am much more than the injustice that can be done to me here, because I am a holder of memory, a memory that spans for 3 generations. And my story is not only a story of resilience, but also is a story of hope and a human story that reminds other people that justice must exist for every human being, not only for the Palestinians or for the Palestinian issue. And that's what we remind the humanity of. Now, I have to ask, do we have any journalists in the room? Okay, you look like friendly journalists, so I shouldn't worry. To give you an idea about myself, I am a Palestinian refugee. And when I say a refugee, really the concept itself does not explain the story, does not give it justice to. I was born and raised in the West Bank in a Palestinian refugee camp, a tiny place, 63 acres, about probably 10 blocks by 10 blocks, with more than 10,000 people, as a third generation in the same place where my father was born and where my grandfather was raised. And the story does not stop there in that refugee camp. And perhaps at some point through our conversation, we will give you some images and understanding what a refugee camp is, because it's not the tents that you would imagine in your head. And it's not only the structure that one might see in pictures or videos. It's the stories of struggle, the stories of injustice, and the stories of harm that no child should grow up in. But the story spans beyond that refugee camp, because, in fact, the event here is talking about the Nakba. The Nakba, 78 years. Sorry, Mosab, you didn't correct me. 78 years, and we are still holding on that right that we deeply believe in, which is the right of return to our lands, to our ancestors' homelands, which was only about 40 miles away from the refugee camp on the Mediterranean Sea. The town is called Khalid. Now it's been erased, and Netanya is called. And the smaller town from which my ancestors connected with, the land that they connected with for many, many generations, is called Khirbat al-Mahdawi, which is a town named after the family, my family. So all of a sudden, for us, it was all of a sudden. For the Israeli tourist militias at that time, it was an orchestration of a plan. My family was ethnically cleansed, by forest exiled, and they found a refuge there. They thought it's going to be 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years, 78 years. And fourth generation is being born there and still living at a much worse oppression just because we refused to give up our right, which is the right of return. And here I am in DC after I felt and I believed when I was a child that I may not live beyond the age of 14. Sharing with you my story and connecting with you on a deep level that is a human level. And when I say that I did not imagine to live beyond the age of 14, it was because of the life that I witnessed there. Not only the harshness and of suffering and the minimal way of living in the camp, and the crowdness and the poverty that we had, but the fire that has burned me as a child during the second Intifada when I was 10 years old, and I started seeing people getting killed in front of my eyes. And one of them is my best friend from childhood, Hameda Mbarak, who was shot on the hands of an Israeli soldier, fell in front of my eyes, a few feet away from me, and it's just destiny that chose him, not me, and I don't understand why. And that was not it. My uncle, Thair Mahdawi, he was killed, assassinated on my 11th birthday, September 12, 2001, just the day after September 11 in this country, where the Israeli military used the coverage and the media not being centered on the West Bank, and they invaded many places. And on the morning of my birthday, where I thought that I'm going to celebrate with my uncle, I wake up on the sounds of helicopters and shooting. And nobody was around me. I was living with my grandmother. I go to the street. I see women weeping. I walk all the way to the main street of the refugee camp. And I hear that my uncle was injured and the ambulance was not allowed to go and retrieve him. And while waiting for minutes, I see the ambulance coming through. And I rush with other people to the back of the ambulance. They open the doors, and I recognize my uncle first from his shoes. And then I see my uncle saturated in blood, his beard and his clothes. 2 shots in the head with a handgun, and 1 shot in the shoulder. And instead of celebrating my uncle and having a gift from him, my gift was taking off his shoes from his feet and holding on it. And that's not it. When I was 12 years old, I saw a number of people who was hit with a strike, shattered as a child in front of my eyes. And I had to collect their body parts with my own hands to honor them and put them in plastic bags. And that was not it. The series of horror continues on and on and on. And as a child, I could not help but feel the pain of injustice, the bitterness of it. I knew that those people did nothing to deserve to be harmed, to be killed unjustly. And what I saw and what I witnessed is a complete impunity that our lives did not matter for the occupation and for the apartheid system. That injustice was a fuel for me, but the fuel that helped me to keep going is my uncle's wish and recommendation before he was killed, where he told me that hope is your only weapon and you find hope through education. And to honor my uncle's memory, I continued my path to education. I made it to one of the best universities in Palestine, still holding on the memory of pain. I studied computer engineering there, fell in love with an American white woman. Sorry if somebody feels that I'm crazy, and I'm glad for the white, women who think that's adorable. And for that love, I ended up climbing the 30-foot apartheid wall around the West Bank on a constructed ladder, going down with a rope, blind kid who's just following his heart to make it to the American embassy at that time, or consulate, I don't know which one was it. And I get my visa and I come to America in 2014. And that's the first time in my life that I was able, in fact, to experience freedom and safety and know what it actually means. We used to sing for freedom. We used to chant for freedom. We used to write poems about freedom without knowing what freedom is, knowing the light through the darkness. This is how I understand it now. But for the first time, I had that freedom. And for the first time, I could sleep in a house without thinking and feeling that the army will break through, either arrest me or shoot me or harm me. For the first time, I was able to travel from the East Coast, to drive from California to Vermont without a checkpoint and without worrying that I have to have my ID on me. Of course, that reality has changed now. To just speed up the story, because Mosab has also a beautiful story, and I don't want to get you bored, and I see some people falling asleep. I'm sorry for... I ended up continuing that dream that my uncle has planted in my head. I went to Columbia University, still holding on the hope to learn and to get educated, and still keeping the memory of my ancestors and all of the stories that I witnessed in the refugee camp, that if I want to share, it would take days, if not months, about their pain and the desire for justice. At Columbia, I started organizing before October 7th. And after October 7th, we built the largest coalition in the history of Columbia University, the same coalition that brought up the encampment and started it. And based on that, the government retaliated against me, that even though I've been living in this country for about 12 years, never broken any law, lived by the book, and I had a transformation in a way that I preach for peace, because I believe peace and justice go hand in hand. And the portraits behind me, those are people who I learn from and I follow their philosophy. The government chose to betray the Constitution and to apply the double standard in this country just because I protested an ongoing genocide, and because I said my people deserve to have equal rights and the freedom and the right of return. And that's why I'm here with you.
Thank you so much, Mohsen. I'll pretend to be a white American journalist. Oh, Mohsen, this is heartbreaking. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I mean, I hope that your uncles, your living uncles, do not join terrorist organizations. I mean, it is so, heartbreaking, poignant, traumatizing. These are understatements. I don't think that any word in the English or Arabic or Russian or Hebrew or any language that God may have created can describe the experience of the Palestinian people. For us, these experiences that we are sharing with you are not experiences that we witnessed. These are not experiences that were shared with us by our grandparents. Today we have Mr. Kamal Al-Khalidi, who is one of the Nakba survivors. Thank you so much for coming, and we are blessed to have you with us today. The stories that we are telling you are not stories that were passed to us by our grandparents or great-grandparents. These are not stories that we have watched in documentaries on National Geographic or whatever documentary channels there are. These are stories that we witnessed, we were told about, we survived, and stories that we were victim of. So the two persons that are sitting on the stage are victims of the Israeli terrorism, witnesses of the Israeli terrorism, and survivors of the Israeli terrorism. The scars we are carrying in our hearts, in our minds, in our psyche, they can't be healed, to be honest. No word can console us, by the way. But thank you so much for trying. No word, unfortunately. Maybe for Mohsen, he sees things differently. He's too passionate, too loving. This is his philosophy of life, and I appreciate that in him. But from my point of view, I don't think that any word, any treatment can heal. I wouldn't say that it's not consoling. I don't think anything can heal the Palestinian people without us seeing those who have committed the war crimes against us as individuals and us as members of families and communities and towns and villages and cities and camps held accountable for the war crimes they have committed. And we can't be healed. It's not that I'm talking this way because it's me, Mosab, or me, the Palestinian, or the refugee, or the father of 3 children who survived the genocide, but who lost many members of their family. But I don't expect, or even I do not accept that anyone would say, you know what, yeah, life is hard, you know, we have to cope with it, life is unfair, there are a lot of injustices, like former President Obama, when he was asked about, I think it was in September 2025, he was asked, and there is a tape that I posted on my social media, he was asked by the audience, someone was screaming, rightfully, do you call this a genocide? And then he was bothered because he was interrupted, reminding me of Kamala Harris when she said, I'm speaking. I mean, we have speaking for 70 or over 100 years. You have never listened to us. So, and then he said, well, I mean, you know, there are disasters and catastrophes everywhere in the world. Really? This is not a catastrophe. This is not a disaster. This is not something that God or whatever force you believe in created in this world. This is what other humans who are supported by other humans in this city and elsewhere. The weapons that Israel is dropping on the tents of my relatives did not come from Mars or Jupiter. They came from here. Just a few days ago, Israel received. I mean, the shocking thing is that nothing is secret about this. It's not like Israel is getting the munitions, you know, through tunnels from America, as if there is a tunnel connecting weapons factory here to Israel. No, I mean, it's on Times of Israel. You can read the Israeli Defense Ministry received 6,500 tons of munitions. This is, I mean, it's public. What sane country on earth would send a gram of munitions to a country that has committed genocide and that continues to subject the people? I mean, when I talk about people, this is something that Mohsen and I share. We're talking about refugees. I think from day one, on October 7th, one of the things that the international media kept saying, you know, Hamas butchered civilians, including Holocaust survivors. This is very sad, of course. But do you know that there are also Nakba survivors who were killed before October 7th and after October 7th? Do we really matter at all? Do you know how many Nakba survivors Israel killed after October 7th? Over 1,000 Nakba survivors. Why? Because 70% of the population in Gaza are Nakba survivors, their children, their grandchildren. I'm a grandchild of refugees. So in every airstrike, in every massacre that Israel carry out and commit, 70% of the victims. So let's forget about the children, that there is a high number of children, high number of women, high number of elderly people getting killed. This is very important to highlight, but also refugees, whether they are Nakba survivors or their children or their grandchildren. Something that is common between me and Mohsen. And I heard something that you said, which is something that I keep saying about the refugee camp. So Mohsen was born in Al-Far'a refugee camp. I was born in Ashati refugee camp. Mohsen was born in the same camp his father was born in. I was born in the same camp my father was born in. Mohsen was born in the same camp his grandparents, and I'm sure maybe your great-grandparents, that they had to live in and died. Same thing. Ashati camp is where my grandparents on my father's side, Hassan and Khadra, and my great-grandparents, Fatima, Ali and Fatima, that's the same camp where they lived after 1948 and died. They died in the refugee camp. And his grandparents died in the refugee camp. I mean, one of the question is, because this is something that Zionists would say, why you call this refugee camp? You know, it's not, look at the buildings. There are refugee camps as long as there are refugees. As long as the Palestinian people do not return to their homes, they will continue to be refugees, even if they live on the moon. They're refugees because home for them is Yafa, Haifa, Akka, Nasara, Safad, Al-Jalil. So both of us come from a similar background, but an interesting aspect of the story is that Mohsen and I did not meet in Jerusalem. Do you know how far Jerusalem is from Gaza, the refugee camp where I was born? 70 kilometers, which is 40 miles. I've never set foot in Jerusalem. Jaffa, the city of my grandparents, is on the same shore as Gaza. I was born in beach camp, which means a shati camp, which means beach camp. Because my grandparents and my great-grandparents were fishermen, or they worked at port, in the Jaffa port. So they decided to live in a camp that was close to the beach. So we were born in a refugee camp, same refugee camps our grandparents were born in. Same camp our great-grandparents. So I mean, back to the point. So Mohsen was born in a camp in the West Bank. I was born in a camp in the Gaza Strip. Jaffa is similar distance, 70 kilometers or less from Gaza. I've never set foot in Jaffa, even to visit, but even, you know what, shockingly, even if I went back to Jaffa, the neighborhood where my grandparents lived before they were expelled, Hayy al-Jabaliya, was demolished by Israel in the 1970s and 80s. Second, Darwish, where my great-grandparents and the great-great-grandparents were born. I have a document from the Ottoman time. It listed the name of the neighborhood, Saknit Darwish in Jaffa, as the birthplace of my great-grandfather and my great-great-grandfather. And it also listed the number of the house. This is something that is discovered just 3 months ago, by the way. Why this information even is not available to us? Because Israel and its terrorist organizations, before the Nakba, they stole the archive. So, but we never met in Jerusalem. I've never even set foot in the West Bank, in Nablus, in Ramallah, in Jenin. He never came to Gaza, so he never met me in Gaza. We met here in this country. Whenever I meet someone from the West Bank, by the way, here, this maybe was at the beginning of my arrival or the first time I left Gaza. So whenever someone said to me, "Oh, hi, my name is Mohsen. I'm from Mukhayam Balata or Mukhayam al-Fara'a from the West Bank." I say, "Oh yes, please tell me about yourself." It seems like someone from a different part of the world, even though we're just less than 50 kilometers away from each other. So we are able to meet each other here in DC or in New York City, 5,000 miles away from our homeland, but we can't meet each other in our own homeland. But, and this is, this is not your fault, but you have to do something about it. You are able to travel to Palestine and visit cities that I have more right than you to visit. I mean, I wish, I want to visit and see. I mean, even visiting is not an option. And part of this is not only the siege that Gaza has been subjected to, or the military siege that the West Bank has been subjected to, but also the fact that there is no airport in the West Bank, and there is no airport in the Gaza Strip. That's something that so many people, who are familiar or not with the Palestinian cause are not aware of. People think that Gaza has an airport, but Israel closed it. They stole the key from the airport keeper. I don't know. But I mean, people don't know, the basics of the Palestinian experience. And that's why it is very, 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 very important to amplify Palestinian voices, to invite Palestinian speakers. Not only Palestinian, because there are so many Palestinians, from the US, from Britain, from Syria, from Jordan. But I'm talking here specifically about Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, from the West Bank, who have first-hand experiences living under occupation. And that's why Mohsen and I are here today in conversation in front of you to talk about where we come from, what brought us here. His uncles, encouraged him to educate himself, and he's now doing his master's at Columbia, and I'm here. I have an affiliation with Syracuse University. I'm not sure, maybe some of my stories because I was here before. I was born in a camp. In 2009, I was wounded in an airstrike, and it was a miracle that I survived. I can't believe I survived, but I survived. And I wrote a long poem in my first poetry collection, Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear. I was hit in an airstrike that killed 7 people. 4 pieces of shrapnel hit me, but the most dangerous one was 2 or 3 centimeters away from my windpipe. That piece of shrapnel pierced through my neck. Even it stayed in my neck. From January 2009, I was 16, until I had an operation, a surgery, in August 2009. So 8 months it lived in my body, and I did not know at the time. And by the way, and also there was a piece of shrapnel in my forehead, another in my cheek, and another in my shoulder. The 2 pieces of shrapnel that were extracted from my body, this is something that will go in my memoir when I write it. But the 2 pieces of shrapnel, after they were extracted, I kept them. And I kept them until our house was bombed in 2023. I kept the pieces of shrapnel behind my books on the shelves. Now, it is one of my wishes, to go back to Gaza, to dig through the rubble and get the 2 pieces of shrapnel. I don't know why, but I need to keep them as evidence of my survival and the terrorism that Israel carried out against me, against my people.
So, our stories, Andy, you can just rest. We can take it away from here. Just enjoy the show. If there is anything to enjoy. The stories that we shared with you are not the stories that are unique of 2 people. Those are stories of hundreds of thousands of children and civilians, actually about 3 million refugees who remain now in refugee camps. In the West Bank, 18 refugee camps. The whole Gaza Strip is a refugee camp now. 70% of the people in Gaza are refugees from their homeland who were denied to return. Refugee camps in Jordan and in Lebanon and in Syria that have different issues, different levels of suffering. And the reason we want to talk about the Nakba, because the Nakba, in our experience, never ended. The Nakba, which translates into catastrophe or a disaster, is an ongoing Nakba. And that level of brutality, that level of inhumanity, the way how we were treated, the continuous oppression, the collective punishment, just because of that reality that as children, we were prepositioned to be born for a family that was a refugee family in a refugee camp. Not that just like, it's not that they stripped us from the land, our land. When we say our land, doesn't mean we own the land. Our land, we relate to it as we belong to it. That is the land that has sheltered us for thousands of years, the land that has fed us, the land that has provided us space, freedom, the land that we connect with our ancestors through it, the olive trees that have been there for many generations, the citrus trees, and usually Mosab and I kind of have this ongoing joke. I say I'm from Khalid, and when he says I'm from Yafa, I say I'm from Yafa too, because my mother's side is from Salame that was erased as well. And my grandmother used to tell me about her adventures when she was 9 years old, running through the forest of oranges there, and the harvest season, and so on. And she died still yearning to go back. She never gave up on the idea of going back. And you see somebody who had a wish. It's like somebody who's so hungry to have a meal, and you know that the meal is there, and they die without having it. That is the sense of like the bitterness of injustice that takes place and that happens. And we're talking, my uncles, two uncles, one was assassinated and the other one died, still holding on that hope that we are going to go back. My friends who were killed in the refugee camp, murdered, holding on that same hope. And the irony of this is that it's not enough to be stripped away from the land that you belong to. It's not enough to be put in concentration camps. It's not enough that you have the minimal and the basic stuff to sustain life. But they had to continue to traumatize us and to keep us under defense, to mow the lawn, just to keep us in the psychology of survival, so we can forget about the origin of all of this trouble and all of this injustice, which is basically kicking people out of their homelands and ethnically cleansing them. And Golda Meir, I believe, she said, the old will die and the young will forget. And guess what? We are able to remember now more than any time before, because we have developed this collective memory, and because there is a destiny, the same destiny that brings Mosab and me here to connect in America with the bitterness and pain that we carry with us, not knowing that we were experiencing similar things, living in refugee camps. He survived not once, more than once. And he felt as a child and as an adult that his life is about, he didn't know if he would actually survive or not. And they had a similar experience. And remember, many children in refugee camps, they feel this way because as you can imagine, children have a free imagination and anything can traumatize them and make them feel this is the end of the world. How about if they see people bleeding in front of them and who get killed in front of them and so on? So this when we call it Nakba, I think the term, in fact, is a very specific term that is very strong and powerful, even though we have to come up with another term that would be only related to what happened with us. Because, for example, the ongoing genocide, the apartheid in the West Bank, and the stealing, the theft of land, the attacks on people, in fact, this whole thing is an omnicide, which is the destruction of every element of life. It's more than a genocide. And some in the media and even others, when they want to describe it, they call it as a crisis. And yesterday, Mosab and I were talking, and Mosab is like, yeah, it's a management crisis. Like, it's a ridiculous to use a crisis to it. It's a catastrophe that is human-made, human-created, and not needed, and it is ongoing since 78 years at least for us. So what is happening now is we are holding on many rights, and we will be talking about the Thawabit. What are the Palestinian rights? What is going there, and where is our future, and how can we envision a future? But also another irony is we both were targeted by hate groups, by Bitar, because for some reason they thought that we both should be on the same list when they started the call for deportation. And when I saw Mosab's name, I said, I think this is the poet. How cool to be with a poet on the same list. Only four people who were on the list. 3 of them are Palestinians, and Mosab was there. And, you know, I have many things that sometimes I envy Mosab for, but not this one, because I get caught and released, and he never gets caught or detained. And the other one بعيد الشر طبعا. The other one is I really, when I was a child, I mean, I had dreams that I was swimming in the refugee camp before, in fact, I experienced the feeling of swimming, which is crazy. I would see the sea and the ocean in the TV, and we would sing for the ocean.
There is no sea in the West Bank.
Just wait a minute.
People don't know the geography.
So I would see it in the TV. I would sing for it. هدي يا بحر هدي طولنا في غيبتنا ودي سلامي ودي للأرض اللي ضمتنا. So we had songs, we had poetry and so on. And I did not see the sea until I was 23 years old. But this guy, he could run through the alleys and just go to the sea. But he did not see the mountains because I could run through the alleys and run to the mountains too. But this is something I envy you for to a certain level. And the other one.
I mean, why haven't your grandparents, take refuge in Gaza on the shore? Why did they have to go to the West Bank, to the mountainous area? They had the choice, but they preferred to go up and down. For us, go in and out.
I think if I want to philosophize about this, it's because of this moment that we needed to have two different experiences. Otherwise, we would be in echo chamber talking the same thing.
Thank you so much, Mohsen.
Do you want to describe the camp that you live there?
Okay. So I want to say something about, I think, your description of the camp that we discussed today is very similar to the description of the camp where I was born and where I was sheltering after October 2023. I will let you describe the camp, but I want to mention something about the ongoing Nakba, why it is an ongoing Nakba. I believe that the term Nakba, which translates into catastrophe or disaster, should only use to describe the events of 1948. And I think the first Nakba, there are too many Nakbas, by the way, even before 1948. Let me just go very quickly through them. The first Nakba was the Balfour Declaration of 1917. The second Nakba was appointing Herbert Samuel as a high commissioner in Palestine when Palestine was put under the British mandate in 1920-21. Why is it a catastrophe, this guy? Because while I was reading, I just discovered that this man was not only British, a colonialist figure, but he was a hardcore Zionist. Did he say, I'm a Zionist? No, that was not the point. No, in 1915, he was a member of the British Parliament. He proposed a memorandum to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine in 1915. So even 2 years before the Balfour Declaration. So 1915, he proposed the memorandum to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine. 1917, Balfour Declaration. 1921, he was appointed a high commissioner. I mean, what do you make of this? This is the second Nakba. And then the third Nakba, I'm sure there are other Nakbas, but the third major Nakba was the partition plan, which gave 55% of our homeland to the Jewish people who, at the time, I'm not talking even about how much the Jewish people owned in Palestine in 1917 when the Balfour Declaration was made, but even 1947, after they purchased land and under the Palestinian peasants and some landowners who were not present and on the land, they had to sell their land. But at the time, even of that partition plan, in 1947, the Jewish people owned only 5 or less than 6% of the land. But they were given 55% of the land, while we, the indigenous people, were given 44. I mean, we were not given. I mean, you're not giving me something that I own, but 44% of the land. So that was the second Nakba. So I think in 1948, when Israel announced its independence, I don't know independence from whom, the term Nakba should only describe that event. Now, what happened after 1948? The continuous displacement of the Palestinian people, the massacring of Palestinian refugees. Massacres, by the way, massacres that were not only perpetrated against Palestinian refugees in Gaza and the West Bank, which are called these days occupied territories, but even within the borders of so-called Israel after 1948. Two prime examples is the massacre of Aylabun on October 29, 1948. So about 5 months after the creation of Israel. The Israeli terrorist gangs attacked a village, a Christian village called Aylabun in the lower Galilee, between the Galilee Sea and I think the Jordan River, the Red Sea. They attacked them. That the majority of the villagers took shelter in two churches, and the priests welcomed the incoming Israeli soldiers with white flags and messages of surrender. Then the Israeli soldiers ordered the priest to invite the people who were hiding inside the churches out. And you know what happened? They lined them up and they executed 14 people. So that was October 29, 1948. This is not October 2023, 24, 25, 26, and 20. No. This is 1948. And later in 1956, I think it was the attack on Egypt. I think it was the Suez Canal. 54? Yeah, Kufr Qasim. 54? 56, yeah, okay. So 54, I mean, you can read the history of these Palestinian peasants who were put under curfew a few hours before the already announced curfew time. The Israeli soldiers, the terrorist soldiers, decided to impose the curfew earlier. And the peasants were just outside. There is no way of phoning them or posting on social media that, okay, we changed like they do nowadays in Gaza, and they continue to break the ceasefire. So by the time the villagers of Kafr Qasim returned to their home, they were executed. About 40 of them were killed. So this is inside so-called Israel. It's not even in the West Bank or in the Gaza Strip. So that's why it is an ongoing Nakba. And I think it is very wise for scholars, especially there's so many thousands of scholars in this country who are able to manufacture drones and F-16s and weapons of mass destruction and nuclear bombs. I think it would be wise, if they could dedicate their time to create a new word to describe what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank. So I would appreciate that. It is an ongoing Nakba. One last point. For at least two reasons. Nowadays, we're talking about now, 2025, 2026. Two things. As I said in my first remarks, the majority of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip are refugees, which means the majority of the victims of Israel's terrorism in Gaza are refugees. And I mentioned to you that at least 1,000 Nakba survivors were killed after October 2023. So this is the element why it is an ongoing Nakba, if you want just to look at the last 2 or 3 years. There is one more reason, which is very, again, heartbreaking, poignant, traumatizing, awful, which is the destruction of refugee camps. There are 8 refugee camps in the Gaza Strip. Israel erased. I mean, when I say erased, it's not like there were empty houses and someone came with a bulldozer and just demolished the houses. I'm literally talking about erasing refugee camps. Some of these houses were bombed while people were inside of them. And I was a witness to the Israeli terrorist attack on October 30th, 2023. I was in Jabalia. And on that day, Israel, I have a recording on my phone. Hi, Mother Agabi, good to have you. Ahlan, ahlan. I was sheltering in a house that belongs to relatives of my mother in the Jabalia refugee camp. That was October 30th, 2023. And there were bombings, and there is a video on my phone of my my mother screaming, and my siblings and their children screaming. My children also is crying, and my daughter Yafa, she was 6 years old. She was screaming, "Daddy, daddy, daddy," something like that. And then when the bombing stopped, I went outside, and the refugee camp, there's still buildings. That was still October 2023. There were houses in the camp, etc. So I went out, and everyone was running in the streets. And I just walked for 5 minutes, which means it's about 700, if not less, meters. And I arrived at the location of the massacre. At least 30 to 40 houses were bombed out. You know what? They were not even bombed out. Some of the houses, because they were not even built from, the ceiling of these houses were not built from concrete. I was born in the camp. Maybe you were also born in a house like ours. The roofing was tin sheets or asbestos sheets. Some of the houses, I have photos. I think if you attended some of my presentations, I did show some photos. Some of the houses, these are rooms, not houses even. Some of them are just rooms, roofed with tin sheets or asbestos sheets. They were buried in bomb craters. And I have in my photos, when I zoom in, I see the mattresses of whoever was living there, the blankets, the clothes, the plastic water barrel tank that was on the roof in the bomb crater itself. So Israel erased 2 refugee camps. Nowadays, if you look at Jabalia, no house stands. Rafah, the same thing. The city and the refugee camp is gone. So it is an ongoing Nakba, not only because our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents were expelled from their homes in 1948 and after and before, or even 1967 for some people. And it's not an ongoing Nakba. It's not only an ongoing Nakba because our people were not allowed to go back to their homes, which is something that is guaranteed. And I mean, why the hell do I have to quote international law and UN? No law on earth should tell me what my right is or not. I don't need to quote from the UN what it says my right is or not. My people did not have the ability to go back to their homes. In fact, some of them who tried, they were killed. So it's an ongoing Nakba not only because of that. It's not an ongoing Nakba only because many of the refugees were killed in refugee camps in Jabalia in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, or in the West Bank in the refugee camps. And it's not only an ongoing Nakba because many of the refugees, many of them were killed in Gaza over the past 3 years. But also the refugee camps, the fact that there are refugee camps, it's a Nakba. Why are there refugee camps? Why haven't these people been allowed to go back? Not to Palestine, not to Yafa, to their homes, because we always think of the right of return. It's only about going back to Yafa or Haifa. No, I'm not talking about the return to the city, to your property. This is an individual right. This is my right, not only as a Palestinian, as a human being who was expelled from his home, whose orange groves, olive groves were taken from them. So they were not allowed to do that. And more cruel than that is that the United States and Britain and so many other governments continue not only to recognize Israel's right to exist and to admit it to the United Nations in 1949, while it continued to occupy illegally and unlawfully and cruelly the land of the Palestinian people. But no, they continue to send more and more weapons, raise their hands when there is a veto on a ceasefire resolution. This is ongoing. The act of a U.S. ambassador to the UN to raise his hand, this is an ongoing Nakba. We should do everything to protect the Palestinian people and to help them go back to their homes and to hold accountable the terrorist army that has been slaughtering them and treating them even less than a stone is treated. We go to museums, we see I mean, it's crazy. You see a stone or a part of something that dates back to 4,000 years ago. Wow, very cute. I'm here. I'm a human person. Why is no one taking care of me? So we care about the past. We care about civilizations, while we have President Trump threatening to wipe out the oldest, the most ancient civilization on this earth. It is very humiliating. I mean, it's very contradictory what's happening. And now for me as a Palestinian to be here and to watch all of these things, it is more infuriating compared to if I did not leave Gaza ever. To see this thing, to see how children are treated, how women are treated, you know, the kind of rights that so many people enjoy, that of course some people here do not enjoy, but to look at how our children are treated. One last thing. When I take my kids to school in Syracuse, while I'm walking with them or biking with them or riding with them, I see signs. It's very beautiful. I mean, believe me, I'm not against this. I wish there are more signs. You are walking on Westmoreland Avenue, for example, or Euclid Avenue, and there is a sign. It says, deaf child in area, blind child in area, disabled person in area. I mean, it is giving you a sign, you know, to be careful. You know, maybe you're gonna hit someone you're not, who doesn't see you or doesn't hear you. There is a lot of care. Or there is a child area that, okay, there is a child area. Be careful when you're driving. I love this. Isn't this beautiful? I need to see more. But why the hell do you continue to send bombs to burn children alive in Gaza? What is this? How does this work for you? When Antony Blinken or Marco Rubio or whatever person is serving in this government, how do they feel when they walk or go to their offices and see the signs, you know, that indicate that this country cares about children, about deaf people, about disabled people, rightfully so. And at the same time, they continue to utter this bullshit. Israel has the right to defend itself. This is the biggest bullshit that I ever heard, because a country that occupies a people does not have the right to defend itself. That's it.
Yeah, Mosab took me on a journey, as he took most of us. And that journey, the irony of pain, why is it that we as Palestinians are less worthy of life? Why is it the reality that you see hundreds of thousands of people and millions of people are suffering, especially children, in refugee camps? You deny them the right of return, the right to live in dignity, the right to live free, to connect with nature, and at the same time, any person who identifies as Jewish, regardless of their condition, if they have one home, 2 homes, 10 homes, they have the right to go, the birthright to go and live on our lands while we are suffering? What kind of heart would accept that? What kind of heart would accept seeing people suffering on daily basis, being killed, not only suffering, starved to death, suffocated with every element of life, and accept it? And that story of erasure of refugee camps is ongoing in the West Bank. Just since October 7th, we're talking about 50,000 Palestinian refugees, my aunts and uncles, in Jenin refugee camp, becoming refugees for the second time. Homes are being demolished. And same in Nur Shams refugee camp. The same refugee camp where my family, where I was born and raised, and my family still lives, Al Farah refugee camp, was literally excavated, and all of the infrastructure in it was destroyed. Houses already would flood with water when the rain falls. You don't have privacy where the houses are sharing the same wall. If you want to cook a meal with meat, you have to think 100 times because your neighbor may not have that. The house where we lived, it was like 2 rooms, 15 foot by 15 foot. I shared it with 10 members of my family, and we would put like mattresses like a puzzle on the floor to be able to sleep. The same room we would eat, and we would make a U with the mattresses and put the food in the middle. And the same room we would actually study and do our work there. No place to play except in the streets. If somebody get injured in the refugee camp and you have to get them outside on a stretcher, you have to bring a sledgehammer sometimes and open a window, a gate, through the cement, through the blocked walls, from one house to another to be able to get them on the street. Sunlight does not enter most of the houses. Water is not sustainable. This is 3-4 generations now. Water would come twice a week. You would save it in tanks over the houses, and you can only shower and wash once a week. What kind of life is that? And that is not enough. The collective punishment. When somebody looks at an Israeli soldier the wrong way, and if you dare to resist, to raise your eye, or to raise your voice, or to push back when they come and hit you, and then this person would get killed, they would come after the family members, they would blacklist them, and most of the time, if somebody actually hits back or attacks an Israeli soldier or an Israeli settler, they come and they demolish the whole house. They collectively punish the whole house. And in certain cases, they would come and block the whole town or the whole city and apply collective punishment on everyone. My brother, Muhammad, he had a fever when he was a few months old. My father and my mother wanted to get him outside of the camp to the hospital. The Israeli soldiers told them the camp is under curfew or siege. If you dare to walk, you would be shot. And my mother and grandmother had to convince my father, don't sacrifice because we don't want the child to live as an orphan. Well, they bring my brother back to the house. They put him under a sink to cool his temperature down with water, and my brother got paralyzed. When I was 8 years old, my mother could not handle being in the camp. I lived without my mother at that age, and my brother, when he was 6 years old, I had to bury him and shuffle dirt over his body. And this is not my story alone. This is the story of many children in refugee camps. And that's not enough. If you think of the refugee camps in Lebanon, every time there is a war, they strike the refugee camps. Ain al-Hilwa, Ain al-Yabrud, and so on. I mean, in Syria, many of the refugees in refugee camps in Syria were also exiled after the war in Syria for the second time. And why all of that is happening? Because Israel has to be a safe homeland for Jews, and Jews alone, and on what cost? And apply the system of supremacy that not only denies, denying is different, it's continuously degrading and going after the people who belong to that land. And the crisis, the Nakba, it's not only ours. Now it's the whole world's Nakba. Because what people are witnessing and the brutality that they are seeing is putting everybody in a conscience, in a moral Nakba. What would we do moving forward from here? And when we think of Palestinian rights, they actually cornered many people to think of just a state of survival in the occupation and don't kill Palestinians in Gaza and let them just have normal shelter while people are in tents, rodents, in the past few weeks are getting in, biting people and harming people while they are asleep. People dying from the cold and from the heat and from the lack of medicine, basic things. So they put us in this state of survival. And even if we, not even if, when we alleviate this suffering, which is important to look at, the priority of suffering, there will never be peace without resolving the right of return. And that's the core of it.
Thank you so much for how many of you here have been to the West Bank or Gaza? So about half the.
Let's say West Bank alone.
How many have been to West Bank?
Gaza.
Okay. How many have been to Gaza? Just a very small handful of people. Yeah.
Why don't you go to
Yeah.
I was waiting.
I wanted to ask you. I know you've told us. I think for most of us that have been to that part of the world, we've seen it firsthand. I know when I was there, just the humiliation that happens at the checkpoints is enough to make you go crazy, really. And you have to learn to adjust and change and change and change, and put on a very different mask every time you have to walk through. It's really, really devastating. I was asking my friends, how can you live like this? Well, I said, that's the only way we are allowed to live. So it's your stories hit home very, very, very clearly. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the things that I think some of the initiatives that you were involved in, Mosab, the library. I know that you spent time, and I think it's called Rifat Al-Arir. It's Edward Said, but was it you and Rifat that put the library together? Was it just you? Can you tell us a little bit more about what brought that about and how you set it up?
I assume some of you are familiar with the story, but very quickly, and it's very touching that you mentioned Rifat, because he's part of the story, though he was not involved in the creation of the Edward Said Public Library. So the Edward Said Public Library was opened in the summer of 2017. And before then, I was collecting books because Gaza has been under siege. And by the way, one of the aspects of the refugee camp is that it's not only that there is no playground in the refugee camp, but I don't remember seeing a public library in the refugee camp. So I grew up, as a child without. I don't remember my father taking me to a library in my life. So that's something that I missed as a child. And in 2014, I graduated from the English department at the Islamic University of Gaza, where Rifat was teaching. So where Rifat fits in the story is that in August 2014, Israel, in a terrorist strike, damaged the administrative building of the Islamic University of Gaza. And that's the year of my graduation, by the way. So my graduation ceremony was postponed as a result of the destruction of the university. So in that administrative building, there was the Faculty of Arts, which includes the English department, where Rifat used to teach and where I was a student. So after the terrorist airstrikes stopped for some hours, I went to the university with a friend of mine who's now in Norway. So we went to the university building, and one of the first scenes to shock me was the scene of English language books buried under the rubble of the English department. The one book that caught my attention, and I have a photo of it at the time with me. I was holding it like I'm carrying, a Pulitzer Prize that I won last year. And that book was the Norton Anthology of American Literature. Again, the Norton Anthology of not Scandinavian literature, not Irish, no, American literature. As if American bombs were after American literature. I don't know. So I rescued that book in a way. I took a photo with it, and I posted it on my social media. I'm not sure how many of you have been following me since 2014. I assume one or two, or no one. I was following myself. Anyway, so I posted that photo of myself, and most of my followers were from the English-speaking world. And because I was posting on, some of you may assume that I started posting about Gaza or, posting photos and news starting in October 2020. No, I've been posting way before 2023. So I was posting on my social media, especially Facebook, what's happening. I was posting some photos of the roses in our garden. Maybe you have seen some of the photos, but talking about 2014, the sunset, some of the hens and chicks in our garden that my parents used to raise. And so when I posted that photo, some people, wanted to help. And they said, Musab, how can we rebuild or send you books? They felt pity for me. So they said, oh, you look very poor. You look very sad with the book. So we want to send you gifts, books. So people started to send me books. And to be honest, it took long weeks before any book landed or arrived in Gaza. Because Gaza, again, because Zionists say Israel left Gaza in 2005. And, they could have built something like Manhattan or Brooklyn or DC. No, Israel never left Gaza. Gaza remained an occupied land. So any book that was coming to me, whether it's from Busboys and Poets or from Brooklyn Public Library, it had to go through Israel. And from there, Israel decides when to release the hostages, the books. So it usually took about 8 weeks before any book entered Gaza. Over time, that was 2014, 2015. 2016, I started to think maybe I can get more and more books. When I launch a fundraiser campaign and a bookstore initiative. And that's what happened. Sorry, a bookshop. No, not bookshop, library initiative. And that's when more and more people were sending books. In 2017, we opened the library, and I named it after Edward Said, the very famous Palestinian-American intellectual and academic who taught at Columbia. In 2019, I managed, with the help of so many generous friends, to open a second branch in Gaza City. And both the branches are now a heap of rubble. The books, the buildings, everything. I don't feel very sad for the libraries because many of my students were killed. Many of my relatives were killed. My house was bombed. The schools where I taught, the school where I studied, the university where I studied, hospitals were bombed, doctors were killed. So I don't feel very, very sad that the libraries were destroyed. But what I hope is not only to rebuild the libraries, but to rebuild the human, to give hope to the children, because these books are for human beings. It's not just for the name. It's for humans. And for me, before I think of recreating a library, I want to work on rebuilding the human, to give them hope that this place, these books that they are going to read are essential, they are beneficial, they are something good to do. Because, I'm afraid as a teacher in the future, maybe some of my students, when I'm in Gaza, they would see, some of my books by American authors or British authors or German authors or Italian authors, and they would say, hey, teacher Musab, what are these American authors doing here? What did they say when we were under attack by Israel? What did they say to their governments when they were sending them, blah, blah, blah? Why should we learn from these people? This is a question, by the way. This is a question for everyone. What will your response be when you come to Gaza or when you meet someone from Gaza, especially children who hopefully will grow up to be adults who can meet you somewhere, whether it's in America, in Europe, anywhere in the world. So you should be ready to answer these questions. And for me, as a founder of a library, I should be ready to give them an answer to why they should be reading these books before I invite them to the library and encourage them to be regular visitors. Shukran.
microphone should be working. If you could try it, please, one more time.
مش مشكلة we can share.
Yeah. If there are any questions, I also want to recognize Mother Agape, who's here, who just came in. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Would you like to say a few words?
I just want to say I'm happy to be here with my good friends now that I've come to know, and unfortunately through tragedy, but the two brothers from different mothers who are just such a source of hope and inspiration, because all that they've been through, that I guess you've heard all through this evening, but through it, their message is one of hope and of love. And I hope that's something that all of us can gain from. And just keep pushing. I'm here today because I was in Washington with a gathering of Christians, not Christian evangelicals, but Christians who are speaking out and saying what's going on in Palestine is a horror, and we have to start changing it. And the change comes from us, right? So listen to these brothers and take their words at heart, and let's all work to make peace for Palestine, free Palestine.
Thank you.
This might actually be an unfair question, but I have been wondering for quite some time now the status of Dr. Abu Safiya. Where is he? I mean, he did such incredible work, and there is no reporting here. So,
yeah, Dr. Hussam Safiya. By the way, I never met him in person, but I think I took one of my children to his office because he was a pediatrician at the Kamal Adwan Hospital. I remember, I think it was Mustafa or Yafa who had the fever. So we took them to the Kamal Adwan Hospital. And the Kamal Adwan Hospital is, by the way, I think within 3 kilometers or 2 miles away from where I used to live in Beit Lahiya. So that was the closest hospital to us. And Dr. Hussam Safi was the one pediatrician whose advice we sought. So as you know, Dr. Hussam was abducted in December 2024. I mean, it is crazy, by the way, before I answer the question, it is crazy because before he was abducted in December 2024, he was also abducted and released the same day. He was interrogated and he was released. So it doesn't make sense, because if he was really, quote unquote, a terrorist, why did you release him in the first place? So the latest updates, I think I posted this, where is my phone? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just 4 days ago where his administrative detention was renewed, no charges whatsoever. And this is an Israeli tactic, being basically taken into prison without any charges. And military courts allow that to happen, as a doctor who lost also his son was killed just before he was detained. Yeah, and they're punishing him for just sustaining that hospital and treating human beings, just people who deserve to live, even if they were fighters, which is not the situation. According to the Geneva Conventions, that the moment somebody is injured, you cannot go after them. But now they're not only killing people regardless, but killing the people who are taking care of them, who should have impunity actually and protection according to international law and according to every spirituality that exists nowadays.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mohsen. And I'm gonna read, something that I posted just yesterday. 3 recently released Palestinian hostages have provided harrowing testimony about the condition of Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza, who has been held in Israeli detention since his arrest on December 27, 2024. Released prisoners, hostages, Ahmed Qadas, I know the family, said he initially did not recognize Abu Safiya due to his physical deterioration. He described the doctor spending most of his time sitting in a daze, barely able to speak, while fellow hostages could hear him screaming during beatings, but were powerless to intervene, with those who tried to help facing tear gas raids. I hope I will remember to say something about this. A second witness, Hamza Abu Amira, said Abu Safiya suffered constant vomiting, could not keep food down, and was denied medical care, as I was denied medical care when I was abducted. He described 7 consecutive days during which prisoners were shackled by both hands and feet. He said Abu Safiya was also reportedly forced to repeat degrading phrases. And I also remember when I was abducted, they were telling other prisoners next to us to say ma ma, which is the sound of the bleating of sheep, to repeat after the soldiers. He said that Abu Safiya was also reportedly forced to repeat degrading phrases about himself under torture. A third released prisoner hostage said he witnessed Abu Safiya being stripped, and I was stripped when I was abducted in front of 3 Israeli soldiers, beaten after interrogation, just like I was, unfortunately, and attacked by police dogs that scratched him and knocked him to the ground. All 3 witnesses warned he faces imminent death if not released immediately. Abu Safiya is one of the 737 medical workers abducted by Israel and its terrorist forces since the start of the genocide. So these are 3 witnesses who shared, and this is, I think, this is very heroic that anyone would give a testimony, because this, I think, would put a target on those who are giving testimony. This is not new in the history of Israel, unfortunately. About, those who tried to help facing tear gas raids. One of my brothers-in-laws was abducted for a year. He was released in October as part of the so-called ceasefire agreement. And he told me, thank you, Brian, and he told me that in one of the raids, the Israeli terrorist soldiers broke into the detention camp and they fired the tear gases, not on the floor, but in the head of someone who was 70-something. And he was bleeding. And the hostages, the Palestinian hostages, were crying for help. Please, he's bleeding, take him. I think he was a medical worker, if I remember. I posted about him. I think it was in October, the same month my brother-in-law was released. And he died. A bonus to that, his body hasn't been released. Just like Dr. Adnan al-Bursh's body, Dr. Adnan, who was in Al-Shifa hospital. And when Israel besieged, he's the #1 orthopedic surgeon in the Gaza Strip. So when Israel and its terrorist forces surrounded and besieged the Al-Shifa hospital, Dr. Adnan al-Bursh went to the Indonesian hospital. He went to the Indonesian hospital. And when Israel came to the Indonesian hospital, he ran to Al-Auda hospital. And from there, he was abducted. And it was, I think, November 2024, 1 month before Dr. Hussam was abducted. In April 2025, he was announced dead under Israeli torture. And his body remains kept hostage by the Israeli terrorist regime. And this is the story of some of Mohsen's family members who were killed in the West Bank and whose bodies remain held hostage by Israel. So we pray for Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, who sacrificed his life. I hope he's alive. I mean, we don't know. I mean, Israel does not allow his lawyers to meet with him. But I hope that he's surviving the trauma, the genocide that he's facing on his own with his fellow hostages. And it's very cowardly that no one here is raising his story, is talking about the crime of touching a doctor, not only taking him from the hospital, abducting him. And he was, by the way, he did not only lose his son. By the way, his son was killed at the gate of the Kamal Adwan hospital. But more than that, he was injured, Dr. Hussam, because the Kamal Adwan hospital, and if you've been following me and other journalists in Gaza, you will know how many times Israel attacked the Kamal Adwan hospital. In one of the attacks, they attacked the solar panels or the power generator, sometimes the 3rd floor of the hospital. And in one of those attacks, he was injured. And there is, I think, an interview with him while he was on the hospital cot. But he continued to do his job. It is very shameful that that happened to him, that that was documented, and that, correct me if I'm wrong, that no Congress person has talked about this or to advocate for his release and the release of all the doctors and journalists and all Palestinians. No Palestinian person should be held hostage by an occupying country that has been perpetrating a genocide for at least 8 decades. So we wish him all the best, inshallah.
It is pretty shameful. I think most of us remember him as he walked into the military vehicle when he was kind of like walking in on his own.
He was friendly. I mean,
Yeah.
he said he talked to the soldier.
Yeah.
Hi, marhaba, كيف الحال?
Yeah.
He said, how are you to the soldiers?
Yeah.
I can't believe this. But he's
I
a
don't.
terrorist. He's
But
a terrorist.
I mean, to call it administrative detention really needs to be changed because they're torture chambers is what they are, and very few people come out, obviously, if not physically damaged, mentally damaged when they leave. Yes, here.
Just on May 14th, next week, Doctors Against Genocide will be focusing on Dr. Abu Sophia's case in Congress. And anybody who wants to join, they meet at 9 a.m. in Union Station, and you can join them. And we also are going to be doing that day a protest at the American Medical Association headquarters, which is right here, right, very close, because they have refused to speak out on his behalf.
Thank you so much.
And many associations, but we're not talking just medical. We're talking the journalists associations. We're talking about the teachers associations. None of them have really been outspoken to try to defend the folks that are being targeted. Somebody was behind me, was looking to talk. Where are you? There you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you. About the silence, can you tell a little bit about the Buddhist community and where are they?
So this is a very niche question, and I have to give a background to it. I am a practicing Buddhist, and I've been practicing Buddhism for the past at least 7 years, and I'm connected with many Buddhist teachers, and there has been silence since the genocide started. The community, there is a phenomena that's happening not only in the Buddhist community, but in many other communities, spiritual communities too. For example, there is a division with the Unitarian Universalists, which is also I am part of the community in Vermont, about initiatives related to apartheid-free community, and they're trying to reconcile that with me, and it's a basic thing related to apartheid. And I have to mention also that Nusayba has some information about passing apartheid-free community that each one of you should check it out. It's part of the divestment and sanctions that has to be done on an institutional level, on a town hall level, on every town and every city hall level, to the state, to the federal, and it is effective and it is working. But to break through the barriers, there are many communities have to come on board. The Buddhist community now in a crisis of some sort. The young Buddhists are protesting against the older teachers. There are many groups in different traditions that are kind of saying that we see the hypocrisy and the double standard, and in fact, one of the most important practices is empathy and compassion. And what is funny for me to see that young Buddhists are losing empathy and compassion for their own teachers. So now, where are we at? Losing the compassion. I mean, for me, I sustain compassion and empathy while still holding people accountable. Not out of anger, not out of hate, not out of resentment, but out of this is the teaching that I learned from you. Why are you not applying it? So the story, to make the story shorter, now many young people are connected with each other in the United States and in other countries who are very determined to get involved, who've been involved actually speaking up about Palestine, and some of them actually left the communities. So now they're connected. I'm connected with many of them, and now we're connecting the different groups. And at the same time, I've been in conversations with 6 prominent teachers in America, and now I'm bringing the five of them together to have the difficult conversation, and they shared with me they're ready to speak up, hold a conference, and to figure out how to bring peace and empathy and compassion while holding the scale for justice without compromise.
Yeah. I'll ask one. Yeah. See, I wanted to ask, about 45 years ago, there was these leaders, we used to chant Yasir, Yasir, Ya Habib, Fatah, Fatah, Tal Habib. And there was Naif Hawatmi and George Habash. And there seemed to be a lot of hope at that time. But that is not, that hope is today, doesn't seem, there seems to be more despondency now than it was at that time. The other thing is, you see, you talked about the Jews coming in, and I don't know, you see, how else to formulate that thing, because unfortunately, even very, very liberal Jews, when it comes to Israel, they side with the wrong. I want to ask them.
Okay, so I don't want to, I have to acknowledge what we've shared is a painful reality and painful images and painful stories to sit with. And if we just look that direction, we could succumb into despair and hopelessness. And the reality is not hopelessness, in fact. I just want to remind each of us that the Palestinian story is now a universal story that every human can relate to. And for the first time in the history of oppression, in our history, for the struggle, the whole world can see what's happening. And in fact, not only can see, but also the protests that we saw erupting all around the world, I believe the largest protests that we've had in our time that we could see. And that's because people are connected to the oppressed, and because people refuse to see oppression and harm and injustice happening while they are not doing anything, because we're interconnected. And it also, what it has done, it has exposed the system of supremacy and the double standard to the point that this country is in a crisis. That every institution, liberal institution or not, is in a crisis right now. And to the point that for the first time in a very long time, in this country, I'm not talking about around the world because we know that people have shifted their minds, but the public opinion now is more connected and supportive of Palestine. And if this is something, it is a light of hope that people are seeing the pain and refusing to stay silent, and change is coming. That is hope. And also the hope that Palestinian people, in fact, when I speak with my family, my father's store, tiny convenient store, was blown up by the Israeli army just a month before I was detained. My brother was tortured. My 4 cousins were killed. 2 of them are taken into, are still like literally hostages with the Israeli army. My family lost homes. I speak with my aunts, I speak with my cousins, and they say, we know liberation is coming and it's happening soon. That's the hope that is there. So continue speaking up, because our words are powerful, that it's shaking the foundation of the system, that they want to throw me and other people who are I'm not vulnerable, but people who are legally vulnerable, they want to silence us. the truth is so powerful. The system of injustice, Israel as a system, must be depleted from financial support, because that beast is come into that very bitty death. And I can see it happening when we apply divestment and sanction and boycott on every level. And the last part that I want to share, Mother Agapia is an exemplar of courage, an exemplar of love, an exemplar of commitment to justice. And every time she gets invited somewhere, she brings a Palestinian with her. So center Palestinian experiences and help us to speak for ourselves like Mother Agapia does. And when we cannot, speak for us and share the stories and continue to sustain hope.
That's a great place to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Mohsen, and thank you so much, Mosab. Thank
We're
you.
grateful for you. Thank you, everyone.
We have a handful of books, a handful of Mosab's books that are available. If you haven't bought them, please go to the front and buy one and bring it back. And he's gracious. He said that he would graciously sign them for you. Thank you all for being here.